There we are. How you doing, sweetie?
I'm doing great.
So we're live streaming today. My wife is next to me. Her name is Anne. My name is Jesus. If you have any questions, feel free to comment or make suggestions. Yes, I do need a haircut. You can ask that anytime. You know, it's my COVID hair I've had for like 5 years. So, don't worry about it. So don't forget, this is easy. You can just click and make a suggestion or a comment. And I look forward to seeing them. And thank you very much ahead of time. And there's a little bit of a delay, obviously. So there we are. So you can see us here. There we are. I'm introducing my wife to the system, so you can observe us in action here. And we have two cameras. We have this camera here and this camera here. Let me move this one slightly so we can get us both in there. There we are. We're both in there. And that's how that works out. Okay. So this is RV and Travel Adventures. My name is Jesus Manuel Garza. This is my wife, Anne. Feel free to chime in at any time, any comments, questions, suggestions, anything you want to talk about. We're open to hearing and listening to you. My wife and I decided as a topic today we can talk about our disparate experiences regarding camping. And we both come from two different experiences. I was born in San Jose, California, grew up there, lived in the San Francisco Bay Area pretty much till I was 50. And Annie grew up in, where'd you grow up? You can tell people?
I would say north central Minnesota. So if you know where Brainerd and Bemidji, Staples, Wadena, those areas, somewhere near there, very small town of about 500 actually. And then when I was 10, we moved to Iowa to another small town called Slater, a town of about 1,000.
So that's pretty good. Slater. I've been to Slater, and it's definitely a nice little community. You have a little log cabin in the square, which is one of the great features.
Yes.
I'm being facetious, by the way.
In the park,
Yeah,
in
the
this
park, yeah.
the Slater Public Park, right? There's a basketball court and a gathering. There's any number of places for community gatherings there, and a lot of wonderful trees. So it's a great place to play as a kid. I rode my bike there a lot when I lived there.
Yeah, we're having some glitchy problems for some reason in our stream right now. I've noticed that our images are frames are freezing, and once in a while, so it's going to look like an old-timey movie for a little bit. I apologize, and it's something a little unusual. It's probably because our Wi-Fi or our internet provider, all of a sudden it's gotten real busy. Everybody's at home streaming Netflix, so that's going to cause a problem. I apologize for the quality of the video, and let me see. And maybe that's I can change it in the camera. I'll let my wife talk for a few minutes while she talks about her experiences more and about her. So I'm gonna go in the front of the camera and see what I can do. I'm gonna pass by you, sweetie, and I'm gonna see if I can adjust the camera just slightly.
Okay.
See, this is those thousands of viewers that are watching us.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. So Jesus had introduced this topic. He has this marvelous RV and Travel Adventures site on YouTube, and he does a lot of reviews of various RVs and RV products, and he's really become, in many ways, his own expert, having to do with anything related to RVs. He's really passionate and interested in the topic. And so I would say that I have been visiting many RV centers all throughout Texas. Whenever we go traveling, say we go to Austin or we go down to Victoria or any of the different areas outside of the Metroplex, which is where we live, we will stop and visit any number of RV stores along the way. And other, Camping World, for example, and any other place that is going to provide products or services for people who like to camp or like to camp using RVs. So I would say he wants me to talk a little bit so that he can work with the technology here, so you're going to have to bear with me. I grew up in a family that loved the outdoors, and my parents My father was a high school principal and a teacher, so he had some time off in the summer. So we would typically go every summer for at least 2 weeks when I was a young person, and we would go camping. And so we did tent camping.
I'm back.
Oh, he's back. So we would go to state forest, national parks, that sort of thing, and we would stay, put up our tent. There was always this big ritual of preparing the campsite, installing the tent, digging a trench around the tent in case it rained, so that the tent wouldn't get wet and so that the rain would move away from where we were. I think Mom and Dad had cots, but the rest of us had big, plain, sort of old-fashioned flannel sleeping bags. And we often stayed in places like Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And we would, spend time around the campfire in the evenings. We would also go to the events in the evening that the camping, I've forgotten what they called them.
The rangers?
Probably rangers, but there was always someone that had that was part of the staff that had an educational program.
Yeah.
I think those were some of my most favorite times because we learned a lot about nature, about animals, about trees, and about the night sky. So you can imagine in 1965 in northern Minnesota, away from any ambient light, how many stars I grew up seeing in constellations. And my father was a big fan of learning constellations. He was an Eagle Scout as a young man growing up. And so he knew a great deal about out of doors and knots and knives and all kinds of extraordinary skills that he passed on to many of his children. And so certainly studying the night sky and learning how to recognize the great, the big and the small dippers and Cassiopeia and some of those kinds of constellations that most of you are familiar with, that was a big part of the summers of my childhood. So those are some of the kinds of experiences that I had camping. It wasn't RV camping. It wasn't really car camping. I mean, we put everything into the car and then drive to the campsite and basically live in a tent.
Yeah. So my experience, my parents weren't big on camping. So essentially because, they were migrant farm workers from South Texas. So from the 20s, 30s, 40s, until they moved to Silicon Valley back in the mid 40s, they lived pretty much in tents. Even when they moved to Silicon Valley, they lived in a tent up in the mountains. So they've always lived in tents, little shacks and stuff like that. So they didn't have this glamorized vision of a very nice, which I enjoy camping, but they definitely didn't have this desire to rough it because they already roughed it quite a bit. So that's the big difference between both of us. She had, more of a middle class experience of camping, and a lot of you out there probably have a very middle class or that kind of but then some of you have a lot of money. Some of you have a lot of money out there. Some of you have those $1 million, RVs, $500,000 RVs, even $300,000, $500,000, $1 million, RVs. Those are nice. That's called glamping. I can only dream about glamping. So that's the price of a house in Texas. Some of the bigger houses in Texas.
So, Jesus, when you say glamping, is that like glamour plus camping? Is that where that comes from?
Yeah, it's a term a lot of people use for people like have Airstreams and, something really, really nice. A
like
Newmar
Airstreams.
or a Prevost, something really, really nice. And those people, they are in the wilderness, but they're also separate from the wilderness. When they go to the wilderness, they just open the door and all of a sudden they're in the wilderness. They're in that space. They can go hiking. They can go fishing. They can have a barbecue outside. They can have a little fire with their friends. But once they're inside, it's like it's a nice house. It's, plush, satellite TV. You can take long showers and not too long showers. And it's very comfortable. You have a king size bed that, in some of the more expansive and elaborate, RVs you can adjust. You have Tempur-Pedic mattresses. What do you call those? Sleep by number mattresses. They have those even in some of the more expensive units. So
yeah, it's like having many of the comforts of home, and then you get up every morning and you get to go camping in the camping and hiking, say in the wilderness, and whitewater rafting or canoeing or kayaking, depending on the kinds of things that depending on where you're actually, the site of where you're camping. We had a trip a couple of years ago, actually, might have been as many as 4 years ago, where I had to go for work up to Wyoming.
Laramie, yeah.
And on the way back, we stopped at Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, and we had such a great experience. We saw elk, we saw a moose, a mother moose and its child, a small child, and we were just doing all kinds of going hiking, and there's such a lot to see there. And we talked with the camp host because they actually were folks that stayed at Rocky Mountain National Park for, I think it was a 3-month period. So they had a
For the
very
season,
large.
they're the camp host, yeah.
They were the camp host.
You all know what camp hosts are, don't you?
Well, maybe you should explain in case they're
Camp
just
host.
learning about
Camp
this.
host. What's a camp host? A camp host is an individual that works for the national parks, the state parks, city parks, even private parks. They are either paid, unpaid individuals that work at the park, and you just make sure everything's okay. Some parks are very small. They only have a couple as a camp host, and they go around, make sure everybody paid their little fees, to camp there, and make sure nobody's up late at night just causing issues and stuff like that. So those are just a small park. We're in a small park, over there. But some of these bigger parks have several individuals, and they just one person, like the husband or the wife is in charge of being the cashier at the little store, and the other person is responsible for cleaning the toilets and making sure the showers are clean, and some of these more expansive places. And some places have even more elaborate setups where somebody is responsible for plumbing, another person's responsible for maintenance of the vehicles, another person's in charge of all the landscaping equipment. So there's some very expensive. But the one we saw over there at the Rocky Mountain National Forest, there is a couple, and they're in a very nice fifth wheel, and they had a chance to talk to them. They also had a person they had a little outdoor activity center where they gave lectures, and maybe it's an interpretive site.
Yes.
Interpretive center, something like that. And they have a ranger or somebody that's affiliated with the parks, and they give a presentation like on owls or the fish or the trees or the environment and what to watch out for, and don't feed the bears.
Yeah, so the camp host often is a source of great information about the campsite or about the national forest and around the surrounding community. So they're really a great resource. Sometimes in the smaller type of campgrounds, they'll actually be the folks that will sell you your firewood, because gathering, typically in many state and national forests, gathering your own firewood is something that you're not allowed to do. So many people bring it in, or you can specifically buy it directly from the camp host. So they're there to solve any problems, or give you the information that you need. And if there's any bear sightings, right, that's something also that they will clue you in, just things to be aware of. So when we were in Rocky Mountain National Park, it was quite cold actually, and very rainy, and we ended up a couple of nights because our fly wasn't working very well, so it didn't keep the rain off our tent, so we got a little wet, so we ended up sleeping in the back of the Honda. So we ended up moving from tent camping to car camping. But it was pretty exciting because I think one morning we opened the back of the Honda, and elk were just moving through our campsite. It was really spectacular. And we also were camping near this beautiful open meadow where there were many herds of these extraordinary elk. And many people were, of course, using very detailed camera equipment to capture movies and images of them, because they were very comfortable with visitors.
Yes, they're very comfortable to a certain degree. I wouldn't assume that they're you can pet them too close, but definitely they were. You could see them in the distance. And to take pictures of these animals, if you're going to be a landscape photographer, the biggest investment you can make is, of course, a very good camera, but you also have to get a very big telephoto lens so you can get a nice tight shot. Sometimes I want to take a picture of an animal. I bring out my Lumix G85, and it's has a 120 millimeter, full frame, essentially what it would be for that 60 on there, equivalent. And I go, man, I wish I can get a lot closer. So a lot of people out there were with their, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 lenses, taking some pictures with their $2,000, $3,000 cameras and having a great time. And they're everywhere. If you go to the Rocky Mountain National, Park down there, forest, it's a A+. I really enjoyed my time down there, except for the rain, of course. That wasn't a very pleasant experience. But we made it work because we, slept inside my wife's Honda at the time. She now has a Subaru, and now I have a truck which has a camper shell. So when we go camping now, we can sleep in the back of our camper. Because we have a truck because it has a camper shell, and it's about 6 foot 2 inches long, and I'm 5'10", and my wife's 5'7", 5'8", so we fit in there no problem. And we put all our stuff in the back, and then when we're ready to camp, we put it in the front of the truck, and we can sleep in there pretty good. Just understand that when it's cold outside, it's cold inside. When it's hot outside, it's hot inside. If it's 110 degrees outside, it's probably 150 degrees inside, because it's like a little oven. So it's definitely has its limitations. And again, there are those of you out there that have some very nice recreational vehicles. And this live stream is going to be over in about 12 minutes. So we're only going to do a half an hour because we're hoping to have some people to comment, but we decided to talk anyway. So I appreciate all you folks out there. Typically, when I do these live streams, I don't, there's some people watching, but they're very shy. But when I post it, I get some people actually commenting after I post it and edit it down, take off the front, all that stuff.
Jesus, what might be fun for us to talk about, since we're only going to talk for about 12 more minutes, are maybe some examples of must-haves when you go camping, like things not to forget. Because some people might be new to camping or using YouTube to learn about things to prepare when you're going camping.
Yeah, of course. There's different levels of must-have. Some of you say you must have the certain year the champagne that's the $20 champagne in abundance in your storage area. But for us, the rudimentary stuff that you need when we go truck bed camping, or if I go truck bed camping, is essentially a cooler. You can buy a nice cooler. $100 cooler that's comparable to the Yetis, which are $200, $300, $400 coolers, and they're very nice. So you can have ice in the cooler, so you can have your sandwiches, your jelly for your sandwiches, and your meats for your breakfast or your vegetables if you're a vegetarian. So you gotta have a very, very nice cooler. Okay.
I would say that you absolutely need a flashlight, because, and this is more if you're tent camping or car camping. Because you might need to use the restroom early in the morning or late at night or in the middle of the night. Often one of the things that Jesus will do is he will set up his camera and he will take images of the night sky, and like at 3 a.m. So that was one of our great adventures, I think, last summer and the year before. But of course, you don't want to be stumbling over rocks or logs that are in your campsite on the way to use the restroom or gather water or anything that you need to do sort of when it's after dark. And believe me, when you're in a campground and the sun goes down, it gets extremely dark. So a flashlight, something comfortable, something easy. Sometimes it's helpful to get a really large one, and then also just a small one that you can carry in your pocket. So I would say a flashlight.
What she's talking about is that, I'm doing time-lapse photographs at night. And I'm, just putting that tripod, and, Fort Worth, Dallas, San Jose, New York, the skies are all, you got the light pollution, you got the pollution in general, which make things. But when you go to New Mexico and you go, wow, I can see everything. I can see the space station passing by. You can see everything, like Clear Lake in California, those areas. And I'd like to thank Mike for coming in. He says, I know you like the Forest River Flagstaff 21 FBRS. Yes, I do. But would you be worried about the quality issues? I don't see any major quality issues. And trying to decide between the Grand Design 17, that's MKE, that's also a Murphy bed model, and the Forest River, by Forest River. So they're both very good. There's always one thing I always hear about from people who purchase an RV is that, they're not built perfectly. They're just, it's a box, and they put some cabinets in there, and the shower, and the bed, and they go brink when they staple it. It's all fast. So, they're built to a certain quality, okay? And that's why they sell for $15, $16, $17, $18, $20, $22,000 after your discount. They have them, listed for $32, $31, $30,000, but they're made to sell for 30 to 35% off with their discounts, okay? So that's 20s, the low 20s, okay? So, there's a reason why they can be so affordable, when you add, it takes a lot of time to make a good travel trailer. But so, the first year, you're going to encounter some, quality control issues. And typically, either some people want to take it in to get it fixed, and they're going to wait 2, 3, 4 months for things to get taken care of, or they're going to just say, I'm going to fix it myself. I'm going to replace that. I'm going to tighten that little screw. I'm going to fix that door. I'm going to adjust that, that gauge. And I'm going to fix it myself. So I have always understood that if you're going to buy a travel trailer or any sort of, or go full time, especially with a Class A, B, or C, or a toy hauler, or whatever you're going to have, is that you have to be very cognizant of your DIY skills. You have to be able to fix things, or have a lot of money to take it somewhere and say, hey, you fix it. And they, I went down to the local, dealership here. They have the different dealership, and right there, prominently, right there in front says $128 or was it $138 an hour for labor. I'm pretty sure they're not paying the employees that much, but they're going to charge you that much. And they said even for something that might take an hour and 5 minutes, they're going to charge you 2 hours. Okay. So DIY skills are critical. Mike, and everybody else out there that's watching our videos, is important. You have to be able to replace a tire, grease your bearings, check things, make sure you know what inflation is in a tire. Some people don't know these things. Some people aren't trained. They're just, they live in the burbs or in the city all their life, and when they go outdoors, they just go, oh, what's going on here? And they become victims. Okay, so that's a sad thing. So we got 8 more minutes to go.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So I think Mike's question is interesting because he's doing the pros and cons. He's saying, well, I'm thinking about a Grand Design 17 or the Forest River. So
I mean the Flagstaff. Yeah, they're both Forest River projects.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, Flagstaff 21 FB. So front bedroom. Ooh, FBR.
Rear slide probably. Or slide or something. I don't know.
Slide is good. So between those two, I mean, can you say maybe a couple of pros and a couple of cons of each one?
Okay.
Because I like
the thing I like about the Flagstaff.
I like the name.
Forest River is a gigantic company, by the way, sweetie.
Right.
They have like 50 different manufacturers under them, and I think both of these are under them. So
Okay.
so the big thing about the Flagstaff that I like personally I like, is that typically they have a solid surface kitchen countertops, dual stainless steel sinks, okay, high quality build cabinets. They actually screw them and glue them, and they have a lot of good storage. And the suspension is typically Torflex, which is an independent suspension. It's a more expensive suspension. It's not just a bunch of leaf springs, for example. But the Grand Design model just has leaf springs, but it has a very nice interior. It has some very nice amenities inside. But I think they're comparable quality to a certain extent. And Grand Design has gained a lot of experience over the last 8 years now that they've been in the marketplace, and they produce a very good travel trailer, and it looks nice. The one thing I don't like about the Grand Design is that chrome trim. They have they about a year and a half ago they changed their cabinets from these dark cabinets to a lighter laminate cabinet, and the top part is one color, bottom part's another, like a white, and in the middle they got a little metal, fake metal strip. You know, one thing you got to be very wary of, or at least I am, you know, I'm hoping to live at least a decade or two if I'm lucky, if everything goes on, is that I don't want things to look old and pathetic sooner than later. Okay, you know, they're advertising this one, you know, what they sell now on the market for $1 to $2 million. This Prevo, that's I think it was a 2001. It looks so dated. The furniture looks so dated because they were trying to be super stylish for that period. I prefer something that's relatively conservative, not too flashy, simple, and that's one of the best things I like about Flagstaff Rockwood products, which are they're both the same pretty much. They just made two of them, so one can sell them. You can sell twice as many. You know,
Right.
they're both, you know, two different dealerships, pretty close to each other.
So I'm going to go back to the earlier points that we were talking about in terms of necessities when you're camping. I would say a hat, and you know, if it's cold, you want to keep your head warm. If it's hot, you want to keep the sun off your face and your shoulders and your neck. So sunblock wouldn't hurt as well. But a hat is something that's crushable, something that you can roll and pack. So some sort of cloth hat. And if it has some sort of string or tie that will keep it around your neck when it flies off, that's always great. So flashlight and a hat's very important. Obviously, if you're going to go hiking, you need a water bottle. That's very important. And I would say the minimum that you want to bring is 2 different pairs of shoes. So you need something lightweight. So if you're going on a big hike, you want decent
A sturdier
shoe, right? And then at the end of a long hike, you want your feet to kind of breathe and relax. So you want a more lightweight kind of shoe to walk around the campsite in and just relax. So those are a couple of other things that I would say that when you're camping, those are necessities.
Yeah, we take those all the time, and of course we also take a little propane stove, a little $175, $100, $200. They come in various price points. Propane stove where we can cook our food because we like to eat. Okay, we can only. Sometimes these sites don't have a grill, you know, like a somewhere to cook food, so you have to bring your own food, and of course the propane bottles. So keep your beverages cold in a cooler. Have some place to cook everything, and of course all the different utensils and food and spices, and you know, canned goods, whatever kind of goods you're going to cook, and of course, you know, a nice hat, nice shoes, and you're pretty much set to go. And of course, if you're going to sleep in the back of your truck like us, we put some nice little. We bought from the local box store some pads, some, you know, backpack pads that you roll up and when you go backpacking, because we've gone backpacking like in the Sierras and different places, and we love to, you know, backpack, you know, day pack, but you know, we've gone backpacking for days, and those pads are pretty nice, but we ended up not even using them because they're only that thin. We just used we repurposed our patio lounge pads, and we put them in the back of the truck, and we go, man, these are very nice. They're thick.
They're much more comfortable, and they were actually more ergonomic in terms of the size, right? So they fit in the back of the truck much better. So it was like we had this lovely padding that was almost custom built to the back of the truck. And it was I was surprised at how comfortable we were. We just thought, well, you know, we would have the small, you know, typical camping outdoors place, you know, support for you to sleep in or just relax in. And it ended up just not being that comfortable. So you'd wake up the next morning and you'd be a little sore. And so we ended up putting, okay, so what else do we need? So sometimes we would put extra blankets or extra sleeping bags to kind of create a little bit more loft. But these patio, what do you call them?
Pads.
Patio pads, right, for chairs lounge chairs. They're absolutely fantastic. They are really comfortable. You wake up the next morning and your back doesn't hurt, and you're ready to go hiking again.
Of course, Mike, and all you folks out there that are going to buy a travel trailer will have your own bathroom. That's nice. You have your own shower.
Toilet paper. I forgot. You should remember toilet paper.
And then you're going to have your own area to sit and read the newspaper or magazine or just look at your pads and charge. And you have some batteries, maybe even some solar on the roof. You can be out there for quite a while. Annie and I, typically when we go camping, we go to places that actually have a bathroom nearby because, you know, there's no place to, take care of business inside the back of my truck bed. I could bring a bucket, just like Bob Wells recommends, But, we typically, like to walk at a state park or county park to the restroom, and we go take care of business there. We wash our hands, stuff like that. And we collect water. We take it back to our site to cook food and, clean things off. So it works out pretty good. Hey, we only got one more minute left. I want to thank you all for watching our video and we got some likes, we got some thumbs up. I appreciate it. So a couple people out there enjoyed our video. How exciting. And I would like to thank my wife for coming on board today and hanging out with me and giving her perspective on camping, her different experience. I have a very different experience. My parents never wanted to go camping. We lived in San Jose, and we used to, for fun, we would go across the mountain, 25 miles to Santa Cruz Beach and boardwalk and stuff like that. That was, we'd spend the day at the beach instead, or go to the park, listen to music, stuff like that. So my parents like, no camping for us. When I grew up, eventually, my children, and we would go to the Big Sur and other locations. My wife and I would go to Lake Tahoe in Northern California. We've camped many places, and we really enjoy ourselves. The number one thing you got to do when you go camping is actually like the person that you're actually camping with. That also helps, okay? So from Fort Worth, Texas, this has been Jesus JMM Garza and
Marie Limer.
And thanks for watching. Tomorrow, Wednesday night, I'm going to have a talk on photography and video and whatever is on your mind. Whatever's on your mind, feel free to join in tomorrow. That's my channel that has 2,300 subscribers. This one has 220 subscribers. So there's not so many here, but you can always subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I would greatly appreciate it. And leave your kind and friendly comments below the description. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate your time.